I'm Priest Rabbi L M Dumizulu of Marifado, also known as Hamiti Buru Ethics, born some 50 plus years ago in a country we call Zimbabwe now, in Africa. Grew up in a family of about 8. My father had 2 wives, and went to school, various schools in Zim, high schools, colleges, and I've always been interested in things esoteric, if I might use the term here. Spirituality and consciousness, they've always have had a lot of impact and influence in my life. For religious organizations, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And around 1999, 98, I realized that our own Bantu or Black traditions are foundational to my being as a Black person. And that's when I started to have a focus on our own Bantu or Black traditions. And I realized that they have been butchered and misrepresented. And unfortunately, my discoveries also led me to realize that the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, the Gita, anything that you can name would eventually, when you synthesize it to its origins, it all came from our ancestors. And then from there, one thing led to the next until I had to launch a YouTube channel, Hamiti Buru Ethics. I think the names, for those that are into these things, they will realize that it's ancient Egyptian, as well as a little bit of the Torah and biblical base, which gives a fundamental to the title that I use, Priest, Teacher, Rabbi. The first one was a priest in everything, priest astronomers, priest scientist, everyone was a priest. In other words, someone who was looking for knowledge. And then at the end of the day, I started to contact, get in touch with a lot of people like Mike now here, and many others. And I'm grateful for that, because if I was just yabbering on the YouTube and nobody would take notice, then it means I would be saying something that doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's me. That's my spiritual aspects. There are other academic aspects that are not necessary for anybody to know, because for me, whether PhD or masters or anything, they don't add validity to the knowledge of self, because that's a completely different area. But some people might need to know, which is okay. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that is much more important. Yeah.
Okay, so you classify yourself as a Bantu. Please explain what a Bantu is.
Yes, that would take a lot of explanations, but to say a number of things that are very critical is that there is a scholastic aspect of Bantu, where you go to scholars like Blick and anthropologists that came to Southern Africa or Africa, and they realize that people in Africa uses the term "tu" to describe people, and then they coined the word Bantu. It's actually a European derivation, but they didn't derive it from thin air. They actually combined what they discovered amongst our people. So Bantu means Black people, to be honest. But linguistically now, when scholars come, and this has caused a lot of confusion. Adding to the confusion is also the apartheid use of Bantustans. And a lot of people think that it's not a good term, but Bantu for us means Black people. Ba is the soul, Ntu is the Black body. So we combine the two and accept that Bantu means Black people, no matter where you find them. So the confusion that we have Nilotics, Cushitics, Caribbeans, Vietnamese who are Black, Chinese who are Black, and then you say they are different people. For us, that does not apply. Bantu is a racial term when we use it linguistically as well as morphologically and whatever you want to use for describing a person.
For those unfamiliar with the name, what is Kemet and why is it so significant to Bantu history?
Oh yeah. Kemet is the interpretation of the way of the letters KMT or QMT that has been deciphered from hieroglyphics. And a number of schools of thought about its definition is that some scholars say it means the black sand or black silt that the Nile River brought from the Moon Mountains and spread in ancient Egypt. As you know, Egypt was a desert, and the Nile gave it life because of the flooding. So they say it's the black soil. Then they say that is Kemet. But for us scholars who live in Africa, where Egypt is found, once we found that Kemet means black, it means Bantu, it means us, it means black people who are the indigenous people of the Nile Valley, and the many other areas that we know civilization started to blossom. Its importance to our consciousness is that it is the apex or the top, the last civilization that we can identify as having been discovered by our ancestors. And a lot of discoveries that are done in ancient Egypt pinpoint to the fact that it was a black civilization and our last efforts in ruling or running the world. So that is its importance in terms of academics and statues and discoveries and other teachings.
What influence did other African countries play in Kemet's prominence?
What we know is that the current boundaries that the scholars give us of Kemet, we don't subscribe to those boundaries. So it played a major leading role, just like, for example, how the United States played a role in the European rule of the world from, let's say, 1776 up to today. That is Kemet. So that is what we can understand, that it came to a point where almost a lot of our people who to say that that is their civilization. If they wanted more education, they wanted more knowledge, more understanding, a better life, good governance, religious pilgrimages, they would tend to look to Kemet. Not necessarily Kemet alone, but it had a bigger and more prominent role.
Did ancient Africa use the word God?
Oh, no, they never use that. They never use that. That's a new name. That's a German Goth, a term that came from Europe. We had our own names for this power that is behind everything. And it differed from tribe to tribe, zone to zone. But the term God specifically, no, it is a new term, as well as the terms like Allah, the terms like Jesus, all the English terms and the most esoteric terms. Our ancestors in any area now they never use it. But the concept of God, the pure concept of God, being non-spirit concept, it existed in Africa and amongst our people everywhere on earth, because we were animists, revered nature, revered everything, and as well as totemic, as well as polytheist and monotheist combined. The three were practiced by us, and there are no contradictions.
So how is your concept of God or the Creator different to that of Christianity? What is God to you?
Yeah, God to us is once you say God, it's a deity, it's a divinity. To put it in crude terms, it's an idol. So when you say God, you play with the word, you can reverse it, it gives you an animal, a dog. The Creator can never have such a name. So our concept of God is that it is a foreign concept. We do not use it. We do not pray to God. But if we want to go to the next level of what do we pray to, we've got three levels that we operate on. Three in terms of prayer: self, the divinities and ancestors, and the last is the unseen creator. So when you fail yourself to do anything, and you come to a point where you can't move or you can't do anything, you are powerless, and you try to push yourself and you fail, then you ask your father and mother. If they cannot help you, grandfather and grandmother, if they cannot help you, you then go into the unseen realm where you got your ancestors according to your bloodline and your blood chain. If they cannot help you, you appeal to what we call the divinities, and the divinities are the principalities, the powers that are greater than our ancestors. I will give names as we proceed. And if you feel that this has not worked, then you can appeal using the same protocol up to the divinities and ask the divinities to pass on your request to the power that created the divinities, that is beyond physicality and beyond spirituality. That's the concept. If you were to say God for us, it's not like God came on earth or God is found there or God is there. Those are divinities. And for us, those are idols. That's why you can draw them, write their name, give them their biography, when they were born, when they died, and so forth. So those are divinities. We do not end our belief and prayer at the divinities. It goes into the unseen realm. Scientists want to call it dark matter, that we agree with it, and all the quantum explanations. That's where we reach. We normally use the term the chasm or the chasm, that we end our perception, spiritual perception and physical perception at a certain point, and from there we say, whatever put me on the earth, whatever put the universe in operation, please help me. Then that is the ultimate God for us.
Christians believe that Africans actually worship these deities. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Very correct. Christians also worship deities. Their deity was crucified on a cross. Their deity was crucified amongst the thieves, two thieves. And they fear another deity called Satan the devil. And they fear a lot of other deities called demons. They try to cast those demons. They believe that a certain deity can come into them and cause them to speak in tongues. They have a ritual where they drink something that is red and a piece of unleavened bread, and they say holy communion with the deities. So they are pointing fingers at us when their four fingers are pointing at them. So there is no human being who walks on the earth who can be free from a deity. Scientists have a deity. It's called observation, experimentation, hypothesis, and conclusion. When you say deity, in a very broad sense, it's a principle or the first principles that you refer to in terms of your worldview and perception for us. Then scholars come and say deity, and then they put an idol, a small little idol. That's also correct. But behind that idol, whoever carved that idol did not start carving it. He had something in his head and an image.
In terms of the geographical boundaries, was the Middle East once part of Africa?
Oh yeah, yes, it was. It was. There was no Middle East. Middle East came up through political machinations by the French, the Americans, and the British. So it was part of Africa right up to China into Far East. Those were, we call them Hindu Kush areas. They were Africa, yes. But the Middle East today, the Arab Middle East is a colonial vestige.
Were the Sumerians African?
Bantu, yes, they were Africans. The term Sumer itself, according to scholars who interpreted the Sumerian tablets, means black heads, black people. And there are statues that remain there, or Bantu, or Dolly Sephardic, broad chin, no, all that stuff. There was no other race there, the Sumer. That's the current scholarship that we have. And when you go into their religions and the religious worship, is same as Kemetic. They came from Kemet. I have a video that I've shown that they were Kushites. Although the Kushite they use, they CU or Kassites. That's what the term they want to try to use. But what happened is there was another race that came and they overtook the whole place. And when you go into the history of the rulers that ruled that part of area, they were Persians. The original Persians were black, but they were superseded by another brand of beings that came into there. That's another area. That's a long area to. The Sumerians were black.
Okay, moving on to history. Is there a connection between Africans and Aborigines?
Oh, yes. We say there's a connection because of the looks. They look like us. The difference that they have is their hair, which is straight, and most of other Africans, their hair is kinky, like mine. We cannot be different from a single body part. So they are Africans. When you go into anthropology and human migration, which is connected to evolution, unfortunately, you will find that the genetics is shown that they moved into Sahu, which we call Australia now, around 60,000 years ago. And if you go right to the Andaman Islands in India, there you find people that are much more African. They look like Sudanese, if you have seen Sudan, blue, black. And they are the most melanin dominant humans you can find on the earth. So it's quite clear, it's obvious they are Africans or black people or melanin dominant people, which is a term that was recently coined and which we find very acceptable, because Bantu has a lot of other connotations. Africa has other connotations. But to answer your general question on that, we can agree that the whole earth was populated by a Negrito type of human being. A Negrito is Negro, so black people.
Can you explain why there are so many similarities between Hinduism and African belief systems?
Yes, because the normal migration and the source, which is Chemet, and the divinities. And now, Buddhism, which competes with Hinduism, the Aryans who came in never really brought anything new. What these people would do, they conquer a certain place, they adopted the cultures, the names, and the places, and they become the people. The same thing like today, when you say American and you lift a European, you no longer use the term European for American. And when you say this is an American in 200 or 300 or 1,000 years to come, someone who will dig up people in America and find George Washington, he will say this is the leader of America, but we know they were indigenous people. Same thing everywhere. So that's the connection, that it came from this source and was adopted by these people that uses it against Buddhism, and to put a buttressing race, a new race, and say this is Hinduism, this is ours. But no, in all honesty, the whole belief systems, when you trace it, they are similar with the Olympian in Greece. Once that connection is made, that is similar with the Greek Olympian, we know the Greeks were barbarians. We know where they went to get the knowledge, and we know how they converted it and started to change the divinities into their own image so that they can feel comfortable.
Okay, moving on to science and astronomy. How much knowledge did ancient Africa have of astronomy?
Massive. Massive. It's amazing that this area has not been explored. So I give 3 places: West Africa, the Dogons; Southern Africa, Great Zimbabwe, and all the other places; and Chemet, the pyramids, the Mohenjo-Daro, and in India. Number 1, when they built these big structures, it has been discovered and accepted via archaeoastronomy that they depict what is in the heavens. The Dogons knew stars that scientists disputed. The star Sirius, they knew it, and they knew star Sirius B. They know another one, which science today is denying, which is around the star Sirius. And so before instruments were made, telescopes were made, our ancestors had already mapped the heavens. And they knew all the cosmos and the bigger bodies in the cosmos. There's the cycles of the sun, the cycles of the moon, the development of the calendar, the names they gave, the destinies of souls, which they say, may you rise up into this to become a star. So all that was, it's massive. It needs another program on its own when we display it. And when you go to the Ngunis in Southern Africa, they have names for almost all the stars that are known. And unfortunately, when they say the Arabs brought this, and so it's new now. I recently heard the Aborigines, they had the star system of 86 elemental star systems, like galaxies, but not really like galaxies as such, but they knew subsets, and that this is a set, this is a set, this is a set. It's massive.
The Bible. When did Black people first get the Bible, and under what circumstances?
It's a very interesting question. I want to first of all say there are people today that say the Ethiopians had a Bible before the Europeans had a Bible, but it's debatable, because we know that the Freemasons were in Ethiopia, and that's why it was not colonized. People think it was not colonized because of something. Anyway, the Ethiopia I'm talking about is not the Nubian Ethiopia, is the Ethiopia, the northern one, the other one, ruled by Haile Selassie. Now, when we say the Bible, we are saying the current Old Testament and New Testament. So when the Europeans, the missionaries came into Africa and introduced the Bible at the same time with colonialism and enslavement. So that's when we can honestly say that's when Africans or Bantus came in touch with the Bible, during colonialism and enslavement. And up to that time, up to today, that's when it really became a book that Black people swear on, forgetting that they didn't accept, our ancestors didn't accept it. They resisted it, but force and colonization was used until people started to change names and to adopt it. And the economic muscle that Europe had, and the gunpowder and the gun was used. That cannot be denied. That's the fact how we came into contact with the Bible, as well as the Quran, same story.
Why do you think that there is such resistance from people to reject the Bible and embrace what they believed in prior to all these religions?
There's the slave mentality. We have not yet removed that slave mentality. Number two, people always think that anything that comes from Europe is the best. It's a programming that has been done to us. The lighter the skin, the wavy the hair, even in our Bantu tradition, when we say congratulations, we say makorokoto amhlope. Amhlope means white, means so it's now right. And the concept of sin is that sin is black and righteousness is white. And you know, like in Psalms, where King David, Psalms 51 says, wash me until I'm clean and as white as snow. Right? People forget that Gehazi was cast and turned into white. So, and they take these scriptures. It's psychological. It's not spiritual. Don't put it at the spiritual level. It's clearly psychological and a form of irrationality that we adopt to defend a position, forgetting that this thing began under colonialism, suppression, enslavement, and wrong education, where our history was pushed down, called primitive, useless. In fact, there was a scholar in Britain who said Africans have no history, which was a lie, which is a total lie. So that's why it is difficult for people to remove Christianity. The other thing is fear. A lot of people have been programmed to want to go to heaven, and they live in a city with golden rods, singing around the throne, praising Jesus, whom they love very much. And the fear of going to hell, where they are told there is a fire there that is burning, and they will be roasted there. What will be burning? Your body goes into the earth. The soul cannot burn. The soul is an entity that cannot burn in a fire. So what burns in the fire is physical. And the physical promises that we are given to going to heaven and having a good life, people want that. And they say, no, you live a poor life now, suffer now, give her the other cheek. If he takes another coat, give him the next one, so that you have a good life in heaven. That people want to have. I know I was a Christian. I don't want to deny that. And when I was raising my hand and closing my eyes and praying, I was encouraged to see myself around the throne of grace in heaven. And I could see that and feel that imagination. It took me almost 2 years, I want to be honest, to remove that concept and totally bury it. At the same time, when I removed it, I had fallen into the Torah and I was doing rabbinical studies. And it also took me another period to really realize, no. I must be myself with my tradition, and my culture is right, is good for me. If I die within my culture, I'm likely to be rewarded within my culture in the spiritual realm. For me, that makes a lot of sense. So for others, they want to go to heaven, and that's what they promise and the reward. So I can't say don't go to heaven, don't have that idea, but analyze the facts. You realize that it's not correct.
So would it be correct to say that without Catholicism, there would be no Christianity as we know it today?
Yes, we cannot deny that. The history of the Catholics, when you say church fathers, those are the Catholic fathers. We might refuse to, we might say, no, let's not use Catholic, because it was used at a certain point. But the tradition and the history and the compilation of the book you carry today, say this is the Bible, it is the Catholics that did that. And they removed certain books, and their Bible has other books. So you cannot deny that fact. It's quite apparent. That's why they call themselves universal, or they own it. It's definite. The other thing I want to add, I have said it in my videos, the Roman Empire did not collapse. It morphed up into European Empire. It's still there today. It's still running the world, the Roman Empire. We still use the Roman calendar, we use Roman numbers. Our laws are Roman Dutch laws. You cannot go into mercantile business without the laws of contract crafted by the Latin. All the lawyers study Latin terms. It's Roman. So you cannot run away from that. It's a fact. The world is owned by the Roman Empire. But it uses very different tactics.
How did the Ethiopian Orthodox Church come about? When did they receive the Bible?
There is a lot of confusion there, but what we know is that there was the London Missionary Society that was financed by a Jewish group, and they financed the whole program, and they took over the monuments you find in Ethiopia today. They were built for ancient Egyptian belief systems, and they've taken over, reshaped them. So the London Missionary Society and the Friends of Israel, who were based in Spain, sponsored and financed two groups. One became the Islamic movement today, and the other one became the Beta Israel, or Hebrews that they find in Ethiopia, connected to Haile Selassie and that line going back to through the Rastafarian and all the other things that we understand. So the Orthodox Church is connected to the Coptics somewhere, and also these guys. It's all a scam. Our ancestors never believed that a deity can be crucified on the cross and save the whole world. Now, so once you have that concept, it means it came from Europe, manufactured in Turkey, and the Nicene Creed. If you remove the Nicene Creed, you have no Christianity, because who was the convener of the Nicene Creed? The Catholic is the Roman Constantine the First. 325 bishops, and one bishop who came from North Africa, Arius, had a different concept, and they purged him out of the hall, and within 2 years he was dead. And the concept of Jesus that Christianity boasts of today, which came from African ancestor worship belief system, came from there. And the Romans could not believe in a spirit, so they made a statue. First it was fish, second it was a lamb, that's why I say Lamb of God, and the last it was a human being. 800 years ago, that's when they said, let's put a human being on the cross. But we know it's all esoteric. It doesn't mean the cross per se. It means crossing over certain realms to become a certain entity. You cross over, your mind crosses over, your life crosses over, you cross out of your mother's womb into the world. So the Orthodox Church, the Coptic Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, all of them came from the Roman cooking pot. That is a fact. They will refuse and resist, but that's a fact, because the Romans took over from the Greeks. The Greeks colonized Africa, and that's when they learned all these esoteric teachings, and they crafted them to suit themselves. And the New Testament is another history of how it came about. Yeah.
And can you briefly explain the creation of the Jesus character?
Yes, there are two levels that one has to always adopt and understand. If you do not adopt these two levels, you start off midway. So the first one is the ancient Egyptian or Kemetic or Hamitic belief system, which is a Bantu belief system of ancestor reverence and ancestor worship. If it is taken to extremes, you can only worship divinities and the creator, but you can reverence your ancestors. But if you reverence them heavily, then you tend to go aggress into worship. Now, when Alexander the Greek conquered Africa, he died prematurely around the age 33. And the kingdom was divided into into 4 kingdoms. And the African part, which was Egypt and all North Africa, was given to the Ptolemies. And the Ptolemies knew that in order to rule Africa, you have to become a pharaoh, divinized. So they tried to force themselves in, but they failed because the priests refused. But they bought their way in and found a certain section, Melkite mulatto priests who had intermarried with the Greeks, accepted to divinize them. But when they did the divination, they took Osiris and the Apis. The Apis is the bull. In African tradition, every home has a bull, which represents ancestors, the power of the ancestors. It also represents other esoteric aspects, which I think many of the researchers know. So they combined Osiris, whom they call Osiris, who we call Osari, an ancestor, and the bull, and come up with Serapis. And this Serapis was the one that the Greeks now said, this is our God. We now worship him. And they took him to Greece. By the time the Romans took over, because the Romans and the Greeks are cousins, they fought and they divinized Osiris and the bull Apis and gave them to the Greeks. And then the Greeks could now have pharaohs and all the other pharaohs you could have from the Ptolemies. And as we know, they took that to Greece, and when the Romans took over, they never changed that. So what happened was when the Romans were ruling, there was a lot of sectarian fight, wars, and battles concerning religiosity and other issues centered on divinities, and many squabbling groups, because the Greeks had destroyed a lot of foundational teachings and banned our ancestral religious belief systems. And Constantine realized 312 AD that there was need for him to have a unifying philosophy in order to rule his empire. So they crafted a meeting out of a number of movements which were led by a number of zealots. When you say Jesus Christ, there were a lot of Jesuses running around that time. And then they said, okay, in this meeting, there are bishops and church fathers and other leaders. They said, let's meet in a place called Nicene in Greek, in Turkey. And when they met, Constantine chaired the meeting, sponsored the meeting, and they promised that if they come up with an agreement, then they could have a religion that would be accepted in the empire. Otherwise, if they continue that way, he would continue fighting them. And the brand of Christianity that was there was, there were lots of, some called it the Way, some called Nazarenes, Gnostics, there are lots of them. And then they said, okay, this is what we believe. And they say, all right, we had a date that came on the earth and died for us. That was a belief of many other people, many other groups. And they said, ours is this one. And they agreed that he would look like a Roman, he would look like a Greek, and they died for their sins. And they crafted all these things from the old literatures that were all over the shore, specifically the Torah and the Hebrew writings, as well as other writings in Mesopotamia, which we have touched. And they combined all these and came up with a creed. I think their creed is known, the Nicene Creed. And the problem with the Nicene Creed, so that it came up, was the disagreement of this deity that they say came to die for their sins. Some said it was purely divine, it was purely spirit, those were called the docetic. And some said this one was only the only one, no one else. They were called monophysites because they believed in one. And the other one said, no, he had a father, a son, and stuff like that. They became Trinitarians. And the Trinitarians won the day. And they said he had a mother and a father, and he was born a divine through a virgin. And they said Constantine's mother, known as Helena, then went to Middle East, which is from Turkey, moved to Jerusalem then, and discovered the crucifix, the planks that were used to crucify this divinity of theirs. And then from there, that place where everyone goes to see the empty tomb, they call the empty tomb theology, believe that, but it was found by Helena, Constantine's mother. Prior to that, Constantine had a vision and saw a cross, which was a sword anyway, and it was given that by this time thou shalt conquer the world. And he believed it at Milvian Bridge when he was fighting to become the ruler from Maximilian. So that's how the Nicene Creed came about. And when they crafted the Nicene Creed, they didn't want it to really lie on the Old Testament, which was the Hebrew Bible or the Torah. They wanted it to stand on its own. So the Greeks codified it. If you start Platonism, you know the New Testament. And then from there, they 50 years later, Constantine accepted Christianity and made it a religion that is acceptable in the Roman Empire. But after him came another pope, another emperor, who officiated and said it's official religion now. The official religion of the whole area was now called Roman Catholic belief system of Roman Catholic Church. And then they produced their Bible. And initially, without the Old Testament, only the New Testament. But prophecies about the virgin birth and the crucifixion and the messianic prophecies forced them to then incorporate the Old Testament. But there was a lot of debate which books would be accepted in the Old Testament, which ones would not be accepted in the Old Testament. And the war about that continued across the whole. If you have studied a little bit of divinity, you know, a thinker or a European thinker called Marcion. Marcion said, we don't need the Old Testament. We are good as it is. But the prophecies forced a lot of people to believe that. There were also Gnostics. Gnostics never believed in the real image, the real reality of Jesus, but they believed in a completely opposite way, right from the Old Testament. In Genesis, they believe the serpent is the actual true God, and the God whom you call Jehovah is the serpent. It's vice versa. They have proof, and the proofs, the Nag Hammadi literature shows you, and the icons, the arrangements of the icons and the books of ancient times. So that kind of gives a very generalized fundamentals of the New Testament and the Catholic religion, which is now masqueraded as the Christianity, and the Orthodox or Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox are all Catholic. They all believe in the same doctrines. But what I want to emphasize before I conclude is that the centerpiece of Christianity is that a divinity came on the earth and died for men's sins, resurrected and went back to heaven. And this divinity was born through a virgin, through a spirit that went over the virgin. All those, that foundation is African. Our ancestors believed that. But they never centered on one, and they say this one is the divinity, because totems will not allow us to do that. So in our own totem, our ancestors died for us. They are not here. The virgin birth, it's our birth, because we are souls, we are spirits. We will go to the spirit realm, whether we accept the literacy of, because Christianity takes everything literally and thinks that this is, Jesus really died on the cross and resurrected, and he resurrected the dead. But he resurrected the dead who are still dead, who are not alive. So we don't believe that. The New Testament itself was borrowed heavily from our esoteric writing. If you read the Book of Coming Forth by Day and you study our ancient teachings, they are straightforward. They've got levels. It's not literal.